anaasɛ ɛsoma wodoma hotefo ebenya de akwakodi ho anaasɛ edin ene wo nanso eni ho ɛsɛ nipa da sani ebetu akɔwiem ene onyankropɔn akɔtena democracy ɛyɛma bibifo anaasɛ ɛnyɛma yɛn kwasi broni trim popa ene senti a wɔde vaccination ɛba abibiman mu na family plan so mpo no ɛhyehyɛ bɛn ana kwasi broni hyehyɛyɛ ɛwɔ de krom enti a wɔde ɛtoa yɛn ɛba ne sɛn ana gay ate atese ɛwɔ wiase afana nyinara ɛnɛ wese illuminati ɛnɛ wese freemason ɛnɛ wese sumwe mu ne nyinara ahyase firi he no broni trim po a wɔde saa nneɛma wɔ nyinara ɛba no de atoa abibiman mu no ɛne sɛn wei entram so hwɛ wake up africa kwasi da wei ni kwasi da bia awia dumienu ɛkɔpem awia no mienu live on Royal TV ɛyɛ adwumadi a ɔfa poku danko yɛ executive director ɛdema free the mind movement ɛne ɔfa Israel Nkroma a ɛyɛ coordinator ɛdema free the mind movement no
ɛbɛka me Kofi Kumi ho
na yɛsim konwa no madi dwumadi ho kyia me na ɛnsɛm bi ati sei no yɛgyina twɛ kronkron so abakɔsɛm ɛne ntwerɛ ahodoɔ so na ɛdeɛ mo ho baabi a obibini ufiri ɛne mu a ɛduro ɛne som a wosombo amabrɔfo sisi akyɛ ɛbra so sɛ call together twɛ ne kaeɛ no ɛtumi bam ne no ana ahyɛ aseɛ o free the mind movement dwumadi ɛfrɛ sɛ wake up africa dwumadi so bra so sɛ yɛfa dwumadi live on Royal TV so kwasi da wei ni kwasi da bia awia dumienu kɔpem no mienu na yɛagye wo so adwenkyerɛ ne wasɛm bisa yɛyɛ ano ɛde ama wo wake up africa abibiman moma yɛn sɔre
one business general abatown Niko multimedia so pay video editing photo shoot photo editing documentary business advert music video funeral program birthday parties onua uni haukra esan say Niko multimedia ebeye ni nyina nanso yenwie yo so we your wedding papa bi Niko multimedia si enha ho kra o me cover ni nyina am so we are sorry anaso say we ejumakuo bi a opesa u streaming live u program aye social media handles na aye Twitter Facebook and de keka ho na Niko multimedia si woni how esan so mo ye ni nyina live abra program na ekoso Niko multimedia si omotonton gadget aye media gadget papa ebini aye audio and video equipment cameras speakers microphones mixers ni nyina Niko multimedia aye ho adwuma Niko multimedia ewo koforidia eho ana motare betimi afre Niko multimedia ewo 0244549107 aye Niko multimedia the media general ewo town. Thank you.
Sabi wani guso a wo hye eye Wake Up Africa dwumadie Royal Television so fidikase so na obenya dwumadie kwasi ada biara premoto a sa fidikase so osomfo Kofi Kumi agwakase wei me na metenam edi dwumadie mu chiame na me ne mpanyifo mienu kwasi ada bia busua na ye de dwumadie asomo mpanyifo no aye wo fa ya opoku dankwa our executive director de ma eku efre free the mind movement one ne ba Israel Nkroma ono so aye national coordinator adema free the mind ku ya na mpanyifo nu se kwasi ada bia du na premoto a fidie so na kyerese enya asemkuma kra mpanyifo wura bama no so a nsem bia ahinta nipa nsem bia ye de asie nipa nsem bia edin ma nipa se obehu na ne no kware wahu atimi ate ase no eno na mpanyifo ye ho adwuma emma kwasi da bia no omo de omwura bama no so ne ahinta ne asie ne nipa bonefo bi ade niema bi a omo de asiesie no mpanyifo yi atwetwe ni nyina pie na omada na di ama yehu ba bi ewiase ne ko ba bi ewiase ne nam no kware kwan so korogen so isan se ofa se ono de ne dwumadie ne se opa entro ehontoma nti asem no se dika na eye no krenko ade ofa kwesi da bia no sa dwuma no obeye e de ama me no mienu ne se nti eye na wotwe ne ne ofa tena ase no enema mienu na oda na di elfa ema yeti ase se eye bible mu asem a efa owura bi efa ni Nimrod ayese oka bible kasa se na osi dan tintin bi ayese na omuka kasa baako na afi obo ade sane ye ma kasa baako no o ma sa kasa baako no entiti mu ma afi na nipa no o ma anti kasa o mu kasa biem na eno na ofa na otwe ne no ofa tena aguamu no o ma ye hu se kasa baako na bible ne kan ne sa no literal ɛna bible ne kan yɛ na saa nso so ɛna di nipa dodoɔ na afa no sɛnea nipa bible ne kan no okuru asɔre dɛm a saa ɛna yɛnim sɛ na kasa yɛ baako pɛ enti ɛyɛ saa bere ne mu ɛna onyankopɔn ɛtete kasa mu ɛde kasa hodoɔ baayɛ na ɔfama yɛhu sɛ na yɛde sua ɛwɔ fam wɔ saa kwan ne so ɛsiane sɛ saa bere no ɔfade yɛwura atwerɛ ni ma yɛhu ɛda na di sɛ na kasa hodoɔ wɔ hɔ bebree ɛsiane sɛ ɛyɛ Noah mma koraa mmiɛnsa no bible ne hyɛ aseɛ kaa sɛ wei ɛkotu kɔtena ha a na ɔne ne nkurɔfoɔ ɔmo man ɔmo kasa ɔmo ka wei na ɔno so te ha na ɔno so te beaeɛ ha ne kasa a ɔka ɔne ne manfoɔ kuro wei ɔman wei eti na ntikyɛmu ne kasa hodoɔ bebree ɛna na ɛwɔ hɔ Egyptfoɔ a na ɛyɛ Mizraim ɔmo nyinaa fi Noah ase Ethiopiafoɔ ɔmo nyinaa fi Noah ase Kush ɛyɛ Sudanfoɔ ɛne papa yi a yɛgya yɛbɔ ne tuo kun ni eyi ne fi Gaddafi kurom foɔ ne nyinaa yɛ nkurɔfoɔ a saa bere no na abibifoɔ a na ɔmo nyinaa fi Noah se a na ɔmo wɔ asase so na ɛno na ɔfama yɛhu sɛ ansa na Nimrod bɛpagya ne mu no na saa nkurɔfoɔ nyinaa na ɔmo wɔ hɔ te na kasa hodoɔ bebree ɛna na ɛwɔ hɔ ɛno mu ɛna ɔfada na di ma yɛhu sɛ na nte sɛ kasa na yɛka sɛ na ɔmo ka kasa baako no na nyɛ sɛ kasa mi bie ma no a me kasa yi sɛ bi a me ka akan kasa yi bi ɛna na yɛka na emom na ɛyɛ enipa nyinaa saa bere na Nimrod bɔ ɔmɔden ka wɔn nyinaa fɛfɛ wɔm bɔ wɔn nyinaa no na ɔma wɔm susu korɔ sɛ yɛn nyinaa yɛ adwene kɔ baako bɛnkurom yɛnyɛ yɛ adwene baako yɛmfa yɛ adwene mmom na yɛnyɛ biribi na biribi a yɛyɛ no yɛnyɛ mfa ntia ɛyɛ ɔsorosoro nyankopɔn ɔbɔ adeɛ ɔbɔ adeɛ ɛyɛ onipa obi a wayɛ n'adwene sɛ ɔno no ɔbɛha nipa enti no yɛn nso yɛpɛ sɛ yɛkyerɛ ne sɛ yɛyɛ nipa yɛ ti ase yɛbɛtumi ayɛ biribi atɛn ɔno koraa ɛno ɔfama yɛhu sɛ objective kasa baako a yɛka no na it has to do with buroni kasa mu buroni bɛka sɛ objective yɛyɛ adwene baako yɛyɛ akoma baako tirimupɔ baako yɛde biribi asi yɛni so sɛ adeɛ wei kwan bia so sɛ natie bia no ɛyɛ sɛ yɛtumi ɛma saa adeɛ no ɛbam yɛtumi achieve saa adeɛ no ɛno ɛne kasa baako a bible no ɛfrɛsi ne saa de to hɔ a yɛn deɛ ne nti aseɛ mu no yɛfa no sɛ na bible no aka no akɔyɛ te sɛ akan kasa mu no yɛse yɛfra asɛm ne ntoma ɛno nti saa kasa no na ɛyɛ kasa bebu a na yɛfra ne ntoma ɛno ɔfa ɛda na di ma yɛhu ne ɛwom owie yɛ no na afei ɔde yɛ ba a ɛyɛ owura bi a yɛfrɛ no Abram ne yɛdi kan na ne din a yɛdi kan no yɛ Abram akyire no na ɔbɛyɛ Abraham na ɔfa ɛda na di efi na wusuo mu kwan a yɛfa so a yɛwo no ɛne yɛwo no wie yɛ nsɛm bi a efi a yɛwo no to yɛ na ne papa Terah a na ɔyɛ somfo wɔ Nimrod ahennie mu Nimrod ahemfie a na ɔno hwɛ Nimrod abosom tumie nyinaa so na Abraham a yɛwo no na ne ho adi baayɛ na ɛsɛ nkeeku no na ɔmo fa akwanyinasɛ nyinaa so na ne papa ɔbɔ adeɛ tumi nti ɛsan sɛ ka ne ho nti ɛma ne papa shielding ne protecting na yɛyi ne fifie kɔ akɔtena cave mu for almost 10 years a akyire ne maame ne papa fi hɔ baayɛ a ne maame ɛne Abraham fi hɔ baa fi a ɔmo kɔtena a ɛyɛ Noah ɛne ne ba Shem nkyɛn a hɔ ɛna ɔkɔgye ne nteteyɛ ɛyɛ ɔbɔ adeɛ nantie mu nteteyɛ no ɔkɔnyaayɛ a ɛnam so ma ɛno nti at the age of 50 years no na kyerɛ sɛ abranteɛ ɛyɛ Abraham na kyerɛ sɛ wakwadare wɔ nyame mu a na waben ɔnam ɛwɔ nyame mu paa ɛno nti ɛnam so ma ɔbaa fie bɛyɛ ne ɔyɛɛyɛ se bubu ne papa ɛyɛ Nimrod abosom nyinaa ma ɛno nti yɛde ne kɔtɔ funu no mu ma tumi a ɔbaadeɛ tumi a ɛka ne ho nti ɔbaadeɛ tumi sane yɛyɛ adwuma a nansa ɛna ɔda afunu no ni mu yɛtafuru no paa nanso hwee anyɛ no a yɛyi no a Nimrod hu sɛ ampa tumi bi ɛkyɛn bi na enunti Nimrod eche na chede na nam so ma enunti obaade to ne nsafre no a obaade ma ne beye gidi ni ofa da na di ema ye hu na wo ne bobre ne nam so a ema obaade frɛ no a obeye obaade somfo a ofa ma ye hu say Nimrod mra so no sabre na mu Noah mra so na ena ye wo Abraham nyan titeye ewo Noah ene ne ba Shem ensam na wotwe ene ne ofa dawe adi ma ye hu ene me no ka say ofa tenase na emom ne ba Israel de dwumadie bi nti ene wantimi ameka yensa wo fidua yi monti enye no ne wo ha abusua no efa ncha eminim se dodo na tenase no expectation ni se Israel enso so eka ye ho madam Roma dwumadie bi enti wantimi ameka ye ho eno nti ya tenase premo atui abusua fra abusua odofo mfra odofo onua mfra onua na be glued to your seat esansa ha ya ji nyansa ya fa nyansa ya tasi nyansa ya pe nyansa nyansa na ya brabo anamontuo mu adeye no ya timi atutu ya namo ede asiye ebia na woni fie na nso dwumadi o pese o ka ho ane aba fontin tanso ko ho a no ane so ba hwe Wake Up Africa GH Wake Up Africa GH ane YouTube and Facebook okọ ho a dwumadi o betimi akan ye ho live na won so wahwe bi okọ a pato adama bi ho boso na enje kinkren uwi a enye no nko a subscribe na afi share che ema wunuanom aka na video bi a de to no wunuanom a omo ntimi hwe we live no o chema o ma omo so nkwaje sem kase atese no ensam a etumi manipa ani da ho ebia nipa ni manipa hu na na montutuo de eye enu ntiche ma wunua so enya ne chefa a ewom maka ne saa no saa nso ena SMS ena WhatsApp message me pa cho fabra me matena si making kind amount me your somfo and the number no 0206 519335 0206 519335 me pam cho mon share announcement yi enso ema me ansa na makofa ho January ya 4th January 4th January ene 4th January ani ene yewura afefufuom me de enye ma afefufuro isanse me ye Hebrew ni me ye Hebrew Israelite ene ntinya ma afefufuro ni nemom in paganism in paganism de o ma afefufuro ene yewura mu na ne 4th January omo se bosome no afena banawie ye okoturo mu a enye saa na te okoturo ni mu a Jane afeno esase March April ena afeno esase nanso in paganism Roman fo di anim ahuru di anim ene Christosum ene Muslim som enyina betaya kire ni osoma hodo betaya kire no omo nyina agesa de we atom omo di tu anamon ene nti wo pagan siseye mu ne de ene bosomi edikan no ne da etoso 9 2026 afofofro no omawuram na ne santi me bo free the mind for mpanyifo nyina reps ni nyina ene oye council member se shanunso emaye on the 10th memenda woye nimu ka okudi meeting kese basopa ani nyina no efa enhihye ye de hye begu kwam se be ya Passover woye nimu no ya afofofro a edi animu ya ba be wuram no ye ne ye be wuram in grand star in a mega way ye ne obade be bompu anim ni anim enu nti ye be meeting kase pa meeting no baso wo Kawokudi ani ye headquarters Kawokudi culture center ho a 10 o'clock 9 o'clock anopa 9 o'clock pepe wadaroma na sa meeting no ahyase enu nti we ye rep we are national council member obia no enhye ne so emaye on the 10th memenda we animi sa meeting no baso sanso so ena members wo fie nyina ene omo a omu die omu tie dwumadie na ye Passover ne ye fe ne sen ye festive ahodo ne ye dia omu ne ye mbom edi no ane se ne so ma ye se Passover no 1st April Passover ye be di no ye afefoforo na ye be wura mu no 1st April and your first day of the new year. 1st April. No, and I bedi your Passover no. The santi shano so efa mayen sakwan so. Okay, makane sa no meko fa ho na afei madanadi na ne ohu bia no ye de atoa wo so. Ova,
Kobi,
ba so makwa
mejo so.
Njidi se ahoden ni bibia eboko.
Oba de adawo.
Ba de adum Israel ha or say
Life is
good. Life is good. Of a life ye good meaning say sabri abusia fra abusia odofo afra odofo onua fra onua ama obia gina konwa enya asem ketwa enu nti ofa ne aka bia no medane e de amawo medase
Kobi menso medase
yo
na de di kan ye bechia ahwefo nyina
ofa ahwefo eje wo so
di na otwa kwa apura ba ba tunye ndie na se de eduadie ne to aso last week ebe wie ni say Abraham survival fiery friends na ipia ne koshi emu nti yo buy na de be see ni say emfie mienu achi say na Nimrod onte ne ho ase wache Abraham enema including servants ne enema ke ka ho nyina no onte ne ho ase tro say o sister la do nyano a obekunu.
Oh, okay.
E dey na cover by osun daye Nimrod so osun daye just na ka say.
Okay.
Na dey buy ni say osun daye no ohun so obi free fiery furnace mu ba o say Abraham.
Okay.
Daye ni mu.
Okay.
Nipa ni pie ba ya no ba no sabe no o da couch mu a o jira home na da isu mi ba.
Okay.
Enti o say nipa na twe so. Enti ho na obo pituru nya no sorry. O sorry na say onye prepared nti o pekwan ne che say watwene ho afiri ho. To free Abraham hu na Abraham kuakusua bi no to board tiko. Ena edani insuo.
Okay.
Ene mini one ne nkofo. The bob pitiri nya ne no say how. Ade we de menti ase ni. Enti na say yanchira ase. To assemble ni wise men ni nyina ma mo bai. Na me boss story to fa no akan. Obekan jasha kakra. Na me kan story ni nyina.
Okay.
Enjaye sa no and of prayer the wise men and the magicians conjurers ni nyina bai na de obi animu anuniki sa na efre no ono ba be kirebu say dai so ni nyina no de wo mu ni say say ewiye mu no Nimrod in his latter days no obi be free Abraham abusuya mu aba obi declare war na war no obi declare no ebe wie say obekum Nimrod ene na sojafo na srafo ni nyina o say ene me ntwen na onu akọware awo ekwa bia say ye ti
mimi di kan waduma ansa na
bia so say fanu ni ewie no
I see.
Nti sabre na ono Abraham so unse achede a Nimrod ma na servant me Eliezer.
Okay.
O kan ho ade obi nyina say won susu say Nimrod ne ba na odre ma to obi so na dia adwin ba say semia ne ma sitie no eso otumi ekokọ hye Noah fie kopno say ekiri bedu.
Okay.
Nje ma Abraham say to whom ekọ Noah fie odi ba bosume ho.
Afa Abraham obre pa o ne eye revolution o e no be revolti
sanity.
Tina ke say eye atentampa ni asem ketwa. I see.
Nje esa no e che say be bosume achi no ekọ ba say Nimrod erefi nyina nti eno ana ma o kan tell ni papa say abi wo hu de tell person obey enti no so obo ade say free an yenko Kena be kan ne hu ne nyina yenko efi so tena ha ni oso de mboni achemi obo ade abom hu ban ene oso sa be pemekum na we odo obeka say de wa bitire no kura enti no yenko achirichiri sene otene ne nsase enkura
enso yeso
enti ma bone tofa obeka nkakra
mate
enti first picture
no abodi edaso no the book of Joshua chapter 12 45 to verse 45 to 52 pacho mo fa sa picture na to so mfa maye ofasa ye kind the book of Joshua and verse 45 to 52 okay yo
5 to 52
yo enti book of Joshua and edaso no the chapter 12 no verse 45 to 52 and ye kind no it ye kind near daso no 45 no I say and at the expiration of 2 years from Abraham's going out of the fire, that is in the 52nd year of his life, behold, King Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne, and the king fell asleep and dreamt that he was standing with his troops and host in a valley opposite the king's furnace. And he lifted up his eyes and saw a man in the likeness of Abraham coming forth from the furnace, and that he came and stood before the king with his drawn sword, and then sprang to the king with his sword. When the king fled from the man, for he was afraid, and while he was running, the man threw an egg upon the king's head, and the egg became a great river. 47. And the king dreamed that all his troops sank in that river and died. And the king took flight with 3 men who were before him, and he escaped. And the king looked at these men, and they were clothed in princely dresses as the garments of kings, and had the appearance and majesty of kings. And while they were running, the river again turned to an egg before the king. And there came forth from the egg a young bird, which came before the king, and flew at his head, and plucked out the king's eye. Like I said, baby of fire biano. And the king was grieved at the sight, and he awoke out of his sleep, and his spirit was agitated, and he felt a great terror. 51. And in the morning the king rose from his couch in fear, and he ordered all the wise men and magicians to come before him, when the king related his dream to them. 52. And a wise servant of the king, whose name was Anuki, answered the king, saying, this is nothing else but the evil of Abraham and his seed, which will spring up against my lord and king in the latter days. Of Abacho.
Let's go the next picture.
Okay. Yo.
Over to us from 53 or 20.
Yo. The next picture, no, about the book of Joshua, na, chapter 12, no, yeah, can you chapter 53 to 64. Near jumping up
verse 53.
Yeah, kind from
chapter 12.
Chapter 12, verse 53 to 64. Now you jump up verse 68 to 70. But your move sa picture no enter so enfamaye.
Nti na to me who say Nimrod also the Abraham wajano onko enso dawe osun yi nti no
ofa ehu kan no ma
ehu na aka no
e ma osan sori biom say no abranti I say baby o se bia no
na church also latter days
ne eba nie
de beba betuni na sini ne beba abawa be we de be iwa onyanware o be jana
na ware na sini na ba I see enti yes and that's no enti ye pato yes as 53 no akọ 664 I say and behold the day will come when Abraham and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and they will smite all the king's host and his troops. And as to what thou hast said concerning 3 men which thou didst see like unto thyself, and which did escape, this means that only thou wilt escape with 3 kings from the kings of the earth, who will be with thee in battle. And that which thou sawest, or the river which turned to an egg as at first, and the young bird plugging out thine eye. This means nothing else but the seed of Abraham, which will slay the king in latter days. Like I said, okay, this is my king's dream, and this is his interpretation, and the dream is true, and the interpretation which the servant has given thee is right. Now therefore, my king, surely thou knowest that it is now 52 years since thy sages saw this at the birth of Abraham. And if my king will suffer Abraham to live in the earth, it will be to the injury of my lord and king. For all the days that Abraham liveth, neither thou nor thy kingdom will be established. For this was known formerly at his birth. And why will not my king slay him, that his evil may be kept from thee in latter days? And Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anuki, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abraham and bring him before the king to suffer death. And Eliezer, Abraham's servant, whom the king had given him, was at that time in the presence of the king, and he heard what Anuki had advised. And the king, I say, sorry, me sound for hobium. I say, and Eliezer, Abraham's servant, whom the king had given him, was at that time in the presence of the king, and he heard what Anuki had advised the king, and what the king had said to cause Abraham's death. And Eliezer said to Abraham, hasten, rise up and save thy soul, that thou mayest not die through the hands of the king. For thus did he see in dream concerning thee, and thus did Anuki interpret it, and thus also did Anuki advise the king concerning thee. 61. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Eliezer, and Abraham hastened and ran for safety to the house of Noah and his son Shem, and he concealed himself there and found place of safety. And the king's servant came to Abraham's house to seek him, but they could not find him. And they searched throughout the country, and he was not be found, and he was not to be found. And they went and searched in every direction, and he was not to be met with. And when the king's servants could not find Abraham, they returned to the king. But the king's anger against Abraham was stilled, as they did not find him. And the king drove from his mind this matter concerning Abraham. And Abraham was concealed in Noah's house for 1 month, until the king had forgotten this matter. But Abraham was still afraid of the king. And terror came to see Abraham, his son, secretly in the house of Noah. And terror was very great in the eyes of the king. 64. And Abraham said to his father, Dost thou not know that the king thinketh to slay me, and to annihilate my name from the earth by the advice of his wicked counselors? Ye jampe akọ 68. 68 to 70 no. I say, now therefore hearken to my voice, and let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of the reach of injury from Nimrod, and serve thou the Lord who created thee in the earth, and it will be well with thee. And cast away all the vain things which thou pursuest. And Abraham ceased to speak when Noah and his son Shem answered Terah, saying, True is the word which Abraham hath said unto thee. 70. And Terah hearkened to the voice of his son Abraham. And Terah did all that Abraham said, for this was from the Lord, that the king should not cause Abraham's death.
No, why are the third picture?
Okay. Third picture no abodi no the book of Joshua chapter 13 1 to 3. Okay. Matthias yepa etimofa sa eno ento so enfa emayen. Okay. Eno na da so nti ye kan chapter 13 1 to 3. And Terah took his son Abraham and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abraham, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. 2. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abraham was good and upright with God and men, and that the Lord his God was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abraham, and he taught them the instruction of the Lord and his ways. And these men remained with Abraham in his house, and they adhered to him. 3. And Abraham remained in the land 3 years, and at the expiration of 3 years the Lord appeared to him and said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee forth from Kasdim, and delivered thee from the hands of thine enemies. Of Ampacho Mary.
Enti sanya wakinkan obedwa home pa na yakwohwe first video na ansa no ni nyina no se yehunu se Nimrod aboni tirimu pose onya Abraham obekunu
obedini juma papa
obedini juma enam da ye bia waso se Abraham asini elebeba be dinawu
ama wahwe ase
ekọ yennimu no his latter years no eni ti o say ni saade a bia be wo wa bia nya wani e be wo no yetu ase
yentwaso
eni ti eni e be bi o se bia ye ko be no na ye nye ma no ena onu nsu dwane ko
fum okokra
ti hono na o ma ni papa eye Abraham o ma ni papa hu so wo emra yebubu abosumu no so na odi mirika ko say Nimrod me ba no me wonu no am dilisi e no wonu abedi mi dem no abedi e kotiri ne kunu mami ene je say anyi ya ogbo ade e be bo ne ho
intervene ye
enma ne huso ohini ache ne niema o se maso da yi ndida bi kura ade mempre
kura
enti ne sadia be sanity enti e ko ba se wo mu ye se dia agbe o mbi free baby o mu ti no na o mati ogbo ade said the last video last week ne kan say monko na mitre mo asase fufu bi omo we they recorded in the Bible account so na mbum Bible dia no say ni esi no account na Bible no ma any year after 3 years stay no mo stay Haran no e no mo so mo to aso akọ e ma tell de o kan say obetra ho won konti Abraham ne household no ene to asoko ya omukodu ai and the
first video no abodi e daso no Terah agrees with Abraham to leave and go to the land of Canaan and serve the true God. Sa video no mama ye.
Terah, a descendant of Noah through the lineage of Shem, was born in the city of Ur of the Chaldeans. He lived during a time when people worshipped idols and practiced polytheism. Terah practiced heavily Chaldeanian culture and religious practices, which includes idol worshipping. One significant event involving Terah was when he decided to leave Ur of the Chaldeans and move his family to the land of Canaan. This decision is not explicitly explained in the Bible. However, Jewish tradition suggests that Terah was seeking a place where they could worship the one true God and escape the idolatry of Ur. Now this is a true wonder and awesomeness of God. Here you have Terah, acting on the conviction of his heart to move his family to a land that God have already reserved for his people, which was from the loins of Terah. Terah was not even aware of this revelation, which proves we can never act outside the scope of God. His, Terah, originally plan was set out to lead his large family from Ur to Canaan. When they got about halfway to Canaan, Terah decided to settle down in Haran instead of pressing on. Haran was the land of comfort, but Canaan was the land of promise. The people of Canaan are idolaters as well. With a plethora of gods, God, the Creator, promised the land of Canaan to Abraham and his descendants as an inheritance. Genesis 12:7-15:7. This promise played a significant role in the religious and cultural beliefs of the Hebrews. But why would God want his people to possess this particular land? Canaan was a fertile and agriculturally rich region, with abundant water sources such as the Jordan River. This made it an attractive and desirable land for the Hebrews, who were primarily an agrarian society. Strategic location. The land of Canaan is located in the eastern Mediterranean region, roughly corresponding to modern-day Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, and parts of Jordan and Syria. It is positioned between the Mediterranean Sea to the west and the Jordan River to the east. The borders of ancient Canaan varied over time, and different historical sources may define its extent slightly differently. However, it is generally understood to encompass a significant portion of the Levant region in antiquity. Canaan was geographically located at the crossroads of ancient trade routes, making it a strategic and valuable land for economic and political purposes. Its position allowed control over trade between various civilizations in the region. The Most High God had his people set up and ready to inherit the bountifulness of his blessings. Overall, the importance of Canaan to the Hebrews stemmed from religious, cultural, agricultural, and strategic reasons. It was seen as the land promised to them by God and was significant in their historical and spiritual identity. The family journeyed from Ur and settled in Haran, a city located along the way to Canaan. They resided there for some time. However, it appears that Terah did not complete the journey to Canaan, but instead decided to live in Haran. Haran is an ancient city about 300 miles, 480 kilometers, northeast of Israel in what is eastern Turkey today. Even though Haran is no more than a ruin next to a small village now, during the time of Terah, it was a city positioned on a major road connecting larger cities. The ancient city of Haran should not be confused with Haran, the brother of Abraham. Terah, son Haran, died in Ur, in the Chaldeans, leaving behind a son named Lot. Terah took on the responsibility of raising Lot and treated him as his own. Terah, however, died in Haran and was buried there. The biblical account does not provide much more information on Terah's life. It focuses more on the experiences and adventures of his son Abraham as he received God's call and became the father of the Israelite nation. Terah's significance lies in being the father of Abraham, who would go on to fulfill God's promise, establish a covenant, and become the patriarch of a great nation.
Abusia sabi o share Wake Up Africa Jumedi Royal Television so. Aha and obenya ne say we a story a efa Abraham ho. Jasha ya kan ne de na ofa ama video a Jasha kan ye no e kire omo movement no a omo di kopie eye Haran a omo de to asokodu Canaan asase so a ye ka Canaan na ene present day Israel Jordan ni ne keka ho Assyria ho no mo no ho no nyina no eye babia Israel ene satami nya bibifo Noah ne nasefo no saa potam ni nyina ade ba Egypt no ene omo fa ho nyina nti wahu se ofa kase abibifo ena na ye wo ba bibia Asia Minor ne ka ho nyina wahu se video yi kire we ye history abakosema tete dia saa bre no na broni MP wiase saa area no of odin a ye de frɛ ho saa bre no Mediterranean area over the pacho
Kofi dase na nka beya ma Stephen ensam for the last picture 3 no a book of Joshua because discrepancy ba ku bi
ebe mu wo
ho no mo a ye pese sort no out na fi ye ma obi ahu no ti ase ye ntimi anka obi ko hu a obetumi akaze na sam kra buku e kan se odi mfie sei ene okoye enso Bible no so say odi mfie sei yani aye nka ne ma obi ahu se ni sitati
okay enti sanko MCR but I'm come back to picture number 3 no the book of Joshua chapter 13 verse 1 to 3 no aha mon come back ho emfama yen
enti okwa obekai 4 to 5
okay
chapter 13 verse 4 to 5
okay yeah correction bi ho aha enti ya come back enti chapter 13 na na ye no but this time you came from 4 to 5 no from 4 to 5 no or say 4 no or say and now therefore if thou will hearken to my voice and keep my commandments my statutes and my laws then will I cause thy enemies to fall before thee and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of heaven and I will send my blessings upon all the works of thy hands and thou shalt lack nothing. 5 no say arise now take thy wife and all or say arise now take thy wife and all belongings to thee and go to the land of Canaan and remain there and I will there be unto thee for a God and I will bless thee. And Abraham rose and took his wife and all belongings to him and he went to the land of Canaan as the Lord had told him. And Abraham was 50 years old when he went from Haran.
Genesis 12.
Okay.
Genesis 12:4.
Okay.
Because Joshua said that were 50
years.
50 years.
Okay.
And Okoye.
Yeah, call Genesis chapter
12 verse 4.
Okay. Genesis chapter 12 verse 4. Okay. I'll say so Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him, and Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran.
You know,
discrepancies are better
because 50 no and was samba ni papa efie a obi hu say ni papa wo idols so ho a obubu no and say when mu nyina achi edu ba bi kura no ye de tum 1 year and sand e pushing into the furnace It won't mean 50 years.
Still maintain
say 50 years.
You know.
Ena Omakupi Harana or two other countries.
So he definitely would have been more than 50 years.
That's right.
Sir.
And you know, say,
yeah, difference.
You clear sad discrepancy. No.
Okay.
Okay. Book of Joshua say no 50 years.
But
and a scripture Genesis also say no 75 years.
Yes.
And you know.
Difference.
Say the better ho.
Sir.
No be to me. Sadia next picture.
Okay. Your next picture no abodi adaso no eye highway of the seed. Fourth highway of the seed. Fourth dispensation. The promise. Genesis chapter 12 verse 2 to 3 and 7. Okay. Me pa cho sa picture mo fati some for my highway of the seed. Fourth dispensation. The promise. Genesis chapter 12. Okay, and abaso no. Eti baby a offer amake no na ye kan no offer say
Abraham.
Okay. Ye kan the fourth dispensation, the promise. Genesis chapter 12 verse 2, 3 and 7. Abraham was told to go to Canaan land and Abraham was told to go to Canaan's land and possess it. En route, however, he found famine in the land and proceeded into Egypt. After trials, tribulations, and confrontations with Pharaoh, he left Egypt to journey to Canaan land. Abraham and Lot, his nephew, son of Haran, separated. Abraham dwelling in Canaan and Lot in Sodom. Genesis chapter 13 verse 12. Okay. Abraham and Sarai. Abraham and Sarai were by this time of good age. Abraham and Sarai were by this time of good age. Sarai seemingly beyond childbearing years. Yet the promise of a spiritual seed had not yet been fulfilled. Through lack of her faith, Sarai gives Abraham her Egyptian handmaiden and Ishmael is born. Genesis 16:11. It would not be until after God made a covenant with Abraham, renames him Abraham, and renames his wife Sarah, that the spiritual seed promised would come forth in the birth of their son Isaac. Genesis chapter 17 verse 19.
Mo kovi wa adie eye.
Okay.
Sadia I come second video.
Okay. The second video no abodi adaso no Abraham's journey to the land of Canaan. Mama you hear that video no.
Now let's walk with Abraham on his incredible journey and see how every step he took connected him deeper and deeper to his African heritage. This isn't just ancient history. This is the unfolding of God's master plan through a man whose roots ran deep into the heart of Africa. When Abraham first left Ur of the Chaldeans, he wasn't just wandering aimlessly through the desert. He was following ancient trade routes that had been established by African civilizations for thousands of years. These weren't random paths through the wilderness. These were sophisticated networks that connected the great kingdoms of Nubia, Egypt, and Ethiopia to the trading centers of Mesopotamia. Abraham knew these routes because his family had been traveling them for generations. The wealth that Abraham carried with him, the servants who accompanied him, the knowledge he had of where to find water and pasture, all of this came from a legacy of African-influenced trade and cultural exchange that his ancestors had been part of for centuries. But here's where it gets really interesting. When Abraham reached Canaan, the land that God promised to give him, he didn't settle down immediately. Instead, Genesis 12:10 tells us, "And there was a famine in the land. And Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land." Special, outstanding scene. Famine to Egypt journey emphasized. Now think about this carefully. When famine struck Canaan, Abraham's first instinct wasn't to go north to Mesopotamia where he came from, or east to other Semitic territories. His immediate response was to go south to Egypt, to the heart of African civilization. This wasn't desperation, this was familiarity. Abraham knew Egypt because his family had connections there. And when Abraham arrived in Egypt, something remarkable happened. He was immediately welcomed into Pharaoh's court. Genesis 12:15-16 tells us, "The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen, and he asses, and men servants and maid servants, and she asses and camels." This wasn't how Egyptians typically treated foreign nomads. Abraham was treated like nobility, like someone who belonged in royal circles. Pharaoh didn't just tolerate Abraham, he enriched him. This only makes sense if Abraham had the kind of heritage and connections that would make him acceptable to Egyptian royalty. Remember, ancient Egypt was incredibly sophisticated in its understanding of genealogy and bloodlines. Pharaoh's court wouldn't have welcomed just anyone with open arms, but Abraham's African heritage, his family connections to the Kushite kingdoms, his understanding of African diplomatic customs, all of this would have made him a natural fit for Egyptian society. And here's something that's absolutely crucial to understand. When Abraham left Egypt, he took with him more than just material wealth. Genesis 12:16 mentions that he received men servants and maidservants from Pharaoh. These weren't just random slaves. These were educated, skilled individuals who would have carried African knowledge, African customs, and African bloodlines into Abraham's household. This is where Hagar enters the story, and her significance goes far beyond what most people realize. She wasn't just Sarah's maidservant. She was a representative of African wisdom and culture who became an integral part of Abraham's family. When she bore Ishmael, she was continuing a bloodline that connected Abraham's Mesopotamian heritage with the ancient wisdom of Africa. But the journey doesn't end there. Abraham's travels throughout Canaan show a pattern of connecting with peoples and places that had strong African influences. When he made his covenant with God at Shechem, he was in a region that archaeological evidence shows had significant African populations. The Oak of Moreh, where Abraham built his first altar, wasn't just a random tree. Archaeological excavations in that area have uncovered artifacts and burial practices that show clear connections to African religious traditions. Abraham was drawn to places where he could connect with the spiritual practices that his ancestors had brought from Africa. And when Abraham rescued Lot from the kings who had captured him, look at who he encountered. Genesis 14:18 tells us about Melchizedek, king of Salem, who was the priest of the Most High God. Now, ancient texts describe Melchizedek as having characteristics that many historians connect to African priestly traditions. Special outstanding scene, Melchizedek encounter emphasized. The way Melchizedek blessed Abraham, the bread and wine he offered, the priestly authority he demonstrated, all of this aligns with African religious practices that were far more sophisticated than anything found in other ancient cultures. Abraham recognized this authority immediately because it connected to his own spiritual heritage. But here's where Abraham's African connections become absolutely undeniable. When it came time to find a wife for Isaac, Abraham sent his servant back to his family in Mesopotamia. But the family the servant found, Rebekah's family, showed clear signs of African influence in their customs, their hospitality, and their understanding of covenant relationships. The way Rebekah's family negotiated the marriage, the gifts they exchanged, the ceremonies they performed, all of this followed patterns that archaeologists have identified as having African origins. This wasn't Abraham trying to maintain some pure Mesopotamian bloodline. This was him ensuring that Isaac's wife came from a family that shared his African-influenced heritage. And when Rebekah arrived in Canaan, She brought with her not just her own African-influenced customs, but also servants and attendants who carried African knowledge and traditions.
Abusia o share Wake Up Africa Jimedi Royal Television so na offer Emma history sia eye de history ho here Africa ho here metie nya mani ji age me ho no che say say rich history na afinsa na offer Emma ye history abakosem efa Abraham ne ho Nyama Abraham timi call Egypt aye je no tom Nyama Abraham sia Melchizedek awo Canaan asase no so a ye je Melchizedek tumi ani nya sa enkabo ma enti osira no a ono nya sa oneness no ba biakoye no esan say aye lineage ana abibi mamu no tete abiye mu no. But no matter baby abakopie once I oka busua no hono de yesia wa omusia Egypt oye Noah sini enti Pharaoh no mane omo maka nyina no mo nim se eye Babylon no eye omu nuanom na te ho enti bra Abraham free ho na obepie Egypt no na omu nim se eye omu nuano no enti omanto to na se ye genti se e royal ya ngini so ho anything na you say bra Abraham be pie Egypt no o fi Egypt no what in your kan you say na ye okono na waye defo anya no kwa o ne defo ni mu no you say asomfo anya asomfo bi keke o Egypt fo omo anom nim de anom dosko wo Egypt adinimu ane abibi fo adeye mu no ene ye de omo kan Pharaoh de omo kan Abraham ho enti you tie story na o hwe ne o Bible ni mu na o say it's confusing just say o say enti siso but afiensa na offer my story no abakosem na sisisu ye ama wa hu de enti a Abraham timi sorry ya o timi call Egypt ye na esanse ono no nim abakosem ana fasa area ni mu nyina na ye omo area mu nyina enti no na onim se Canaan sabre no ekom wo eho na aduanesem adin na ye dry pa ti ofi wo no ofi ara no otu ye no wanko Canaan no ana ocha mu baji no nse sabre no Egypt de na with omo adiye ne se na omo ye omo niema no aduane de na abu for so omo nim se ne omo system no na very sophisticated ehunu how to package aduane ne niema nti ocha mu na no ba ho who say of us just history na sesama ma fedi who say like I say omunim terrain nim omunim omade video na ma who say Abraham na oyebibini tum Noah oyebibini Nimrod oyebibini esan say we oyebibini ni patuntum me no yen nanom abakosem na yehwe over bacho me that history over history there you see ana ya kire
say otimisua over so person to Bible as year say otimi hu history
over sir
na fi eni eke ka ho no bi prophecies ayeka no we be si wo ha we ni nyina no abakosem say bibi pagya ye nyina so current event the cause say ebe kwa ko wie no na akoda ne abakosem na fi ye kasa ni make reference it is out in yema me say ase a scripture obeti ase ama aye desa it means we ni age na me to aso no and say ancient land of Canaan no na a part and also extension of the African landmass ebo earlier map bia prior to the construction of the Suez Canal in 1859 there one land mass into omo ti oni nyina no kala enwa na wo kalabi extension of the African land mass now Kokina now ko amamaya descendants of Ham
afa no kura kyerɛ sɛ o kan Yesu ade na o se na fa abofra no ko Egypt na o se anadwo na o ne tre fumpɔnkɔ so sanka Yesu kana ya twɛ sa ata mepo a aka yesi de no de fumpɔnkɔ ne twapo ɛsa ne ba Egypt oyiwa ebom eno kura ekɔ ene eba yekɔ ene eba ti trade unso no so omu di dwabom omu kosa Abraham no
it's not the same people ene afefo mo na mu bisa Abraham o bibini abere mo hu somoni age ye ni abakosem you can say the Bible story is an African story it is a sanity na oba de ka kire Abraham say na de yin yin zi asese ni din ko maka kire say monko na monko di asase no eno and I promise for forefathers. In the area na de Abraham koe no, nay a ho and another garden of Eden, you know, and they are the same land. Genesis 15:18. The location of the garden of Eden, no, sa land location wa any de ma Abraham. Nti aka so onko process no na che say ho no ada ba ye ba bia ho no mu dada obi anim se nkofo ti ho eni nti na o se ko ho and at his age 50 years no obetumi ahu nso obenya an idea say o nananom ye o ma nante ho no mu a enti na nye bibia nwanwa enti okoko duru ho no o nso amamo ho gina ya bibifo Ninianum no akwakohia wo hoho bia ni na mo nam se na ekomo ho nti no ena ma onu bom ekoi na Genesis 15:19 to 21 African tribesmen and mo wo asase no so a okoto wo mo emra okopie ho no Genesis 15:19 to 21
Genesis chapter 15 verse 19 to 21. From Pacho, 19. Oh. My Bible now I have blank. Pacho, where there? Wadaroma, maybe a fufro. Okay. Genesis chapter 15 verse 19
to 21.
I say the Kenites and the Kezites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites.
Enti when money the various tribesmen okoye okohu wo mu okina asase so. Won't get different from him. Same color, same everything. And woman nyina atena asase baako so for all these years. Enti anu mu no ano enam se Abraham ofiri ni krom across Euphrates okodu Canaan no obeye the first Hebrew Genesis 14:13.
Genesis chapter 14 verse 13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorites, brother of Eshcol and brother of Ane, and these were confederates with Abraham.
And you know the first Hebrew. The first
Hebrew.
The word Hebrew. They can say Abraham the Hebrew. The root Hebrew word, Ava.
Okay.
cross over.
Okay.
Pass over.
Okay.
Until by crossing the Euphrates into Canaan and obey the first Hebrew. And also by the grandfather of Jacob. Ah, no so. Actually, ni din basi sambe Israel. It is nessa what tinia kase ye Hebrew Israelites. Hanifi. Nti entwaso ye kwa enim. Ye kwa enim no. Ye kwa akɔhwɛ the next video.
Okay. You share the next video now. Abodino Abraham's African Heritage. Sa video no ma
Journey and his connections paint a crystal clear picture of a man with deep African roots. And I'm about to show you exactly how the pieces fit together. First, let's talk about Ur of the Chaldeans. This isn't just some random city in ancient Mesopotamia. Archaeological evidence shows us that Ur was a major trading hub with extensive connections to African civilizations, particularly ancient Nubia and Egypt. The city was literally a melting pot of cultures, with African merchants, artisans, and nobility living alongside Mesopotamian families. Recent excavations have uncovered burial sites in Ur containing distinctly African artifacts. We're talking about jewelry styles, ceremonial objects, and even musical instruments that are identical to those found in ancient African kingdoms. This wasn't cultural exchange, this was cultural integration. African families weren't just visiting Ur, they were part of its very foundation. But here's where it gets really compelling. When we look at Abraham's family tree, every single connection points toward African heritage. His father Terah wasn't just some random Mesopotamian shepherd. Historical records suggest that Terah's lineage can be traced back to the Cushite kingdoms, the very peoples that the Bible identifies as African descendants of Noah's son Ham. Now let's talk about something that should have been obvious all along, Abraham's relationship with Hagar. Genesis 16:1 tells us that Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. Think about this for a moment. Hagar wasn't just any Egyptian woman. She was specifically chosen by Sarah to bear Abraham's child. In ancient Middle Eastern culture, this kind of arrangement wasn't random. Sarah would have chosen someone whose children would be acceptable to the family line, someone whose background was compatible with Abraham's heritage. If Abraham was purely Mesopotamian, with no African connections, why would Sarah choose an African-Egyptian woman to bear his heir? This makes zero sense, unless Abraham himself had African blood. Sarah knew exactly what she was doing. She was ensuring that Abraham's lineage would continue through someone who shared his true ethnic heritage. And let's not forget about Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son with Hagar. Genesis 21:20 tells us that God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. The wilderness Ishmael inhabited was the African desert regions, where he founded tribes that became the Arab nations. But here's the key. These tribes maintained strong African characteristics and connections. But wait, there's more. After Sarah died, Abraham married Keturah, and this is where the African connection becomes absolutely undeniable. Special, outstanding scene. Keturah marriage emphasized. Genesis 25:1-4 lists 6 sons that Abraham had with Keturah. Then again Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah, and she bare him Zimran and Jokshan and Medan and Midian and Ishbak and Shuah. Now here's what your Sunday school teacher never told you. Every single one of these sons founded tribes in Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. Zimran's descendants settled in what is now Ethiopia. Jokshan's lineage spread throughout the Horn of Africa. Medan and Midian established kingdoms that stretched from the Red Sea to the African interior. The Midianites, in particular, maintained strong connections to both African and Arabian cultures for centuries. When Moses fled to Midian, he wasn't going to some isolated desert tribe. He was joining a sophisticated civilization with deep African roots, founded by Abraham's own son. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Bible tells us in Exodus 2:16 that Moses married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro the Midianite priest. Numbers 12:1 refers to her as the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. Ethiopian, not Arabian, not Middle Eastern Ethiopian. This is a direct reference to her African heritage through the Midianite line that traces back to Abraham and Keturah. And if you think that's coincidence, consider this. When Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses for marrying this Ethiopian woman, God struck Miriam with leprosy. God himself defended this union between Moses and an African woman from Abraham's lineage. That's not just acceptance, that's divine approval of the African connection in Abraham's family tree. Let's also examine Isaac and Rebekah's story. When Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for Isaac, he specifically instructed him to go to his kindred in Mesopotamia. But here's the crucial detail that gets glossed over. Rebekah's family, including her brother Laban, showed characteristics that historians have connected to African Mesopotamian communities. The cultural practices described in their household, the way they handled marriage negotiations, even the physical descriptions given in the text, all align with what we know about African-influenced families in that region. This wasn't Abraham trying to maintain some pure Mesopotamian bloodline. This was him ensuring that Isaac's wife came from families with similar African heritage. Look at the way Rebekah is described when she first meets Isaac's servant at the well. Genesis 24:16 says she was very fair to look upon. Now the Hebrew word used here is yafeh, which doesn't necessarily mean light-skinned as many translations suggest. It means beautiful, attractive, pleasant to look at. This word was used to describe beauty across all ethnic groups in ancient texts. But here's what's really telling. When Rebekah gave birth to twins, Esau and Jacob, Genesis 25:25 describes Esau as coming out red, all over like an hairy garment. The Hebrew word admonai doesn't just mean red. It refers to a reddish-brown complexion that was common among African populations in that region. And let's not forget about Jacob's own children and their diverse appearances. When Joseph was in Egypt, he was able to blend in completely with the Egyptian population. Pharaoh's officials didn't recognize him as foreign when his brothers came looking for grain. This only makes sense if Joseph had African features that allowed him to pass as Egyptian.
Rich history. Abakosema imuham pa enene ifia papa eye wofaya opoku dankwa ejagu fia ha abusuani nyina mejidi se obia ofia aye nije ene Abraham ena ye hwe ne history obeye Hebrew aya meka se makasa asemu ofia pense yen yesi ye Hebrew Israelites eno ye distinction ye distinct ye ho Hebrew Israelites the entia sese untimi ka Hebrew ni nkwa na ese udi Israelite ne soso no say there were many Hebrews enti Keturah ma Abraham enso ko ware 5 no 6 emema omunyira ko titi kro bebre no omunya ya Hebrew fo ba ye no the entia ye say Israelites no and the distinct yen unya ka Israelite no ye say we Isaac Abraham Boshebana oni Sarah on the bob you ever say anka and you ever on the bobra because on no ye ne yiri a oni no dikan a oni no ha shabra base ebere ye hu ne wo mu nyina nti ono no bose no ba no esi ne so ti ono no ye de nti a ese o ye Hebrew Israelites no ye and not distinctive because there are many Hebrews ye were Ishmael Hebrew owo ho Katura mano omu nyina no obodi na be Hebrew asoso with language any tribe no na be asoso omu nya Hebrews enu nti we aya rich abakosema na kire se yenya na enipa baako anti wo hwe aware ena na video ni kire Abraham baby okopie ye Canaan na osoma ma omko back ko ware fi kese lineage no enti na kire se omu ye nipa baako de ma Sarah Eddie Hagar of our here na kese wo hwe story na Hagar oka enkrofo ankoa na yede ma Abraham fi Egypt ma wo fi ho no na oka ho bi because video no bakose me yahu say tam wo fi ho no Pharaoh ankasa ma no etitirifo a omo ye nkoa omo di na cha no mo som no e no de on ban ti wi na kese Hagar ka saa enkoa ne ho enti no Sarah hu se na etia no hu so ye babu ni se na otia ye bo ne hu no se o baby adu no me do wo ma miwura na kese wo so lineage no Abraham abusua no kese atumi atoa so abakosema edimu na efe na ehwam ofa ene na wode mayen ofa beso odiam na yakenkan amanfo messages no
kan ni nyina
yo abusuafo ni messages no kakra na ye wi ansa na yaba ye ko YouTuber emise videos no message abane ye bakope or say hi guys, we are coming to see good things about the Lord. Or see your friend Stephen Opoku. Okay, Stephen Opoku and a day sa message eba ye. Okay, ye call ye normal SMS message na. Mami hwe WhatsApp honso so hwe se WhatsApp me wo messages e wo ho na WhatsApp offer mini message bia wo ho enti me nko me normal SMS message no. Okay, aha me sha se afi ha we say Musa, please, we the Muslim doesn't support the Roman calendar. Please and please, we are our calendar too. Okay, so you say omunso omo calendar. Yo, me pato me da say why? Ofo, greetings. We respect you and love you long life. Okay, we say ofo eno no ye okay. Nyono de eba ye eno no. Okay, yo, ye twaso I say thank God He has welcomed you successfully in the year 2026. May He give you energy to work, wisdom for success, and passion to help others. Happy New Year. Hey, Wafa Peter. Hey, Sembeni. Wafa Peter. Me New Year no embayo. Aha. You are so intelligent. Continue to show us the way. If it is true. Thanks. Okay, yo. Like I say, one kasa unya sure say niaye kano if it is true or not. Okay. We say my great people, good afternoon. I always pray for you. God should give you long life, peace, and prosperity. Elder Osei Bunsu. Kitikrachi. Okay, we are Kitikrachi. Sana odebaye. Okay, yo, yeah, that's it. Where? Okay, Hagado. I say the established authorities of this world are like their master Nimrod. They do not plan or relinquishing their power and authority over people to one who opposes everything that these deceitful men have created without Yah. Shalom, my shepherd and senior by Willie. Okay. When our faith is concentrated upon Yahuwah, we are in communication with the ever-living source of all existence. It was in this way that Yahuwah communicated with Abram. Wake up, My Edenic People by Willie Kumasi. Okay, Onwa and a day we so ebaye. We say please, what was the name of Abraham's mother? Oh, so we there last week ye can you? Yeah, inside quiet TV. Some last week last week tape no. O call YouTuber, o here Wake Up Africa, o call YouTube now here Wake Up Africa GHR. Me pa cho okay click live a. Obi a video ne ba share dia e wo ho ansa na ne mata de we obi hu. Aha. Good afternoon. We say good afternoon. I am watching you live from Pramso. Thank you wise men for explaining the actual meaning of Genesis 11 about Emmanuel and the Bible. I say good afternoon wise men. I'm doing the listening from Pramso. I'm really enjoying the education being given today. Keep your good works up and God will see you through. Yo yeda say apeu Emmanuel. So please, where did the white root begins? If Abraham is from Chile, he must speak Chile language and same as his descendants. But my question is, why isn't that his language speaking changes to Hebrew? Thank you. Onyame kopon eneye ne saa se osesan na brabo crossing over osesan na de nyina enoma no abrabo foforo san se brea Nimrod enyema ohyehye no na ye abosomade ye ade etie nyame nti nyame eyi ni fi ho no sesan enu nti ne ma obeye Hebrew ni no se answer no mediamawa. Please, does it mean that Abraham did not have a child with Sarai? Okay. Yo. Sabri aye kan nyina na ontime ene no enwoye. Eye echire ansana obinya obe yebema ne eba no. Sabri aye kan wasem nyina ni more tata ni nyina no. Sa time ne de na okopie Egypt nya na omunwoye. Abraham and African, please. My name is Christian. Okay. We so ni ode baye na eno no. Please, I want the history or story of Ghanaian. Okay. Or say a person history efa Ghana for him. Yo. Is Jesus black? Is Jesus black from Rixing priesthood God with? Hey. Udino no. Yo. Yate. Scanty, God bless your hard work. Okay. The part of the day you do know, you be call of a hobium na ne hobia no offer e dia maye.
I be a series of pictures.
Okay.
We making kind.
Okay.
Next picture
no abodi no eye. Our beloved forefather and mother Abraham and Sarah. But just that picture no fancy so for maye.
Nti Abraham and Sarah na omo ye before
kama
nti kind ye was ye no mami
yo ye kind ye was ye na our beloved forefather and mother Abraham and Sarah and ewo ho no picture no fe before. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Genesis 18:11. Okay, yo, of ambacho makai and next no picture no Abraham's family tree. Me pacho and no mofasa picture no ento so enfamaye. Abraham's family tree. Okay, yo, Abraham's family tree. Okay, and no that's on Abraham's family tree. Abraham ono wasoro no oba ni benkum so a ye wo Hagar ni ba ye Ishmael. Aha, usani ba Ishmael asia ho na Arab nations enu nti omuna omudi ekan Abraham Hagar na di kan Abraham ne yere oware na odi kan ewo ma ne ba no ne ba odi kan no Ishmael na bakan ono na omo forming Arab nations. Aha, na ne otoso osem finfin na nkasa ne yere no pemu na nkasa na ye Sarah obewo Isaac obewo Isaac na Isaac nso ebeware Rebecca Emma Rebecca ebewo eye Esau na Jacob na Esau nso so busua obefom ye nation oman obetete ne ye Edom enu ntu bete wo ha bete Edomite ane Esau asefo no eno no omo so mo ye Hebrew fo saa Ishmael so ye Hebrew ni saa nso so na Jacob ne Esau no mo ye nuanom enu nti yese no mo ye ntafo ane Jacob na Esau no mo ye nta na Jacob na be ye Israel Jacob ono no be ye Israel enu nti ene ye fe omo the Hebrew Israelites enu nti Esau asefo no ye the Hebrew Edomite sa pepepe na opa ye be fe na the Hebrew Ishmaelites enu so omo ho okay ana ne wo biem no so ne yire a Abraham yire biem a ono so otwato no ye Ketura na Ketura wo mako eye ose Zimran ono bi kan Jokshan ono to so mienu Midan ana to so miensa Ishbak enan Shua enum Shiba ena Didan ensia ena eye maame Ketura enso so ewo ma sankofo nyina enso so etetire omoman eno ena Abraham family line no okay ye to aso a na ye call picture di ho na ofa pacho me to aso picture di ho no eye Abraham amufa sa picture no ento so emfa mayen Abraham ane Abraham okay eno ena ewo ho no Abraham ena ewo ho no the same ayina say by Hagar ono ye Ishmael ena owo no by Sarah Isaac some of the Arabs and ena Ishmael so Sarah so wo Isaac ono be wo Jacob ena Esau Edomites and Edomians ena some of sons of Jacob tribe of Israel the tribes of Israel ena by Ketura so be wo insia 6 sons also some of the Arabs also possibly the Arabians of India ehonu mu ni nyina no na omo wo ho enti family line no na ewo ho no na obesenta ohwe ase na obesenta Jacob eye the 12 emma 12 no ane Reuben Simon Levi Judah Judah yenka Judah yeka no Judah isan say ye need letter J kra ewo mu abrofo na this anema nyina be hihiem yewo Benjamin yewo Joseph omu nyina Dan no mu nyina no ebepiem Ashagad we no mu nyina ewo ho omu nyina so ebe mu ono so Jacob nso ware enan Leah Leah Zippa Bilha ena Rahel omu ma ena ebeye 12 no na chese enye asemkuma kra ane sa ena
obi bisa question ti dan person kan no
okay
so black and Jesus was there
oh okay
enti no kan ba
okay
say we na
eti Abraham ye bibini Abraham ase no baby a Jesus say na momo friend no ye friend Yeshua opie ba no be pie fi Jacob emu tribe onu na 12 tribes no efi ne mu no na ahana Yeshua be fi Yeshua fi Judah abusuanum Judah abusuan Judah na yebenya King David King Solomon ana King David and King Solomon the kings of Judah na ho ana Jesus epie na Jesus say ne nana Abraham ne nana Abraham dia na ge say oye nipa tuntum enya dia nipa tuntum betimi akowo obroni sa pe no me in the ancient time no sa time no Mesopotamia era na ye kan wa say no sa history abakosem no say ya wo na o kala no ukoye unya friend saying problem with the skin enu na omo fe no me ba cho mo ma me di no leprosy aha okonya fita okala ne koye fita te se kwesi kokko pe leprosy no me sabre no ye be pam kra anka yesu anka yentumi fa ne nya hwema ne nyeye esan se saade ne ba wo so a na kese oni obo ade wo fie ni obo ade nya problem ama obo ade asotwe bi asase e ba eno sabre sa na etie enti Jesus no onye broni kala bibia wonimu. Okay, sana etie. Next picture no abodi no Jacob and Esau. Pacho sa picture no mufa ento ho emfa emmayen. Aha. And that was the very Jacob and Esau. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb.
Ya can say 2 races.
Yes,
mistakes are asofo bi ye ni say Jacob ni Esau ba ku ye broni and ba ku ye bibi.
Sure.
And can say 2 races.
2 races. We say 2 nations. Before. And
a red. Could be because you so
red.
Empty red also there. A color prevalent in African populations.
Sir, yenianum ebe for Voltarians. Omo de sa color no we mu pa.
Red.
And you omo do na yeta from
red.
Yeta de tom.
Do the concept.
And Esau. It was say, and the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elders shall serve the younger. Genesis chapter 25 verse 23.
Next video.
The next video no abodino Abraham's African heritage. Ya share sa video no dada. The do one no anafa.
No.
Ya share.
The do one no
Abraham, the father of many nations. But sa video no ma ya.
The cultural practices Abraham's family maintained also show clear African influences. The way they buried their dead, the ceremonies they performed, the way they structured their households, all of these align with African traditions rather than purely Mesopotamian ones. When Abraham purchased the cave of Machpelah to bury Sarah, he negotiated with the Hittites using customs that archaeologists have identified as having African origins. The way he approached the negotiation, the ceremonial aspects of the transaction, even the way he showed respect to the local customs, all of these reflect African diplomatic and social traditions that had been passed down through his family line. Think about Abraham's nomadic lifestyle too. The way he moved his flocks, the seasonal patterns he followed, the relationships he built with different tribes along his journey, all of this mirrors the sophisticated pastoral systems that African civilizations had developed over millennia. But here's something that will absolutely blow your mind. Recent DNA analysis of ancient burial sites in the region where Abraham lived has revealed something extraordinary. The genetic markers found in these remains show clear African ancestry, specifically from the Cushite and Ethiopian lineages that the Bible connects to Ham's descendants. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You're wondering how this connects to the broader picture of God's plan. Well, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. This African heritage wasn't just incidental to Abraham's story, it was absolutely central to God's purpose for him. When God called Abraham out of Ur, he wasn't just calling one man, he was calling a man whose genetic and cultural heritage would allow him to literally father the diversity of nations that we see today. Abraham's African blood was the key that unlocked God's promise to make him the father of many nations. Look at how Abraham's descendants spread across the earth. Through Isaac and Jacob, we get the 12 tribes of Israel, but they weren't uniform in appearance or culture. Through Ishmael, we get the Arab nations with their rich African-influenced traditions. Through the sons of Keturah, we get the Ethiopian and African kingdoms that maintained Abraham's covenant blessings for generations. This diversity wasn't accidental, it was intentional. God specifically chose a man whose heritage would produce the rainbow of humanity that reflects his glory across every continent and every culture. And here's something that modern genetics has confirmed. The mitochondrial DNA patterns found in populations across Africa, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe show common ancestral markers that scientists have traced back to the exact time period and region where Abraham lived. But the religious establishment has worked overtime to hide this truth. They've created images of Abraham that look like European royalty. They've written commentaries that ignore the obvious African connections. They've built theological systems that separate God's people based on color and culture, when the truth is that we all flow from the same African source through Abraham's line. This isn't just about setting the historical record straight. This is about understanding that God's covenant with Abraham was always meant to be inclusive, always meant to embrace the full spectrum of human diversity, always meant to show that his love transcends every barrier that humans try to create. When you understand Abraham's true heritage, you understand why God's promise to him was so revolutionary. In thee shall all families of the earth be blessed, Genesis 12:3 tells us. All families, not some families. All nations, not selected nations. This was a covenant that embraced the African roots of humanity and promised to extend God's blessing through those roots to every corner of the earth. The evidence is overwhelming, the connections are undeniable, and the implications are life-changing. Abraham, the father of faith, carried African blood, and that blood flows through the covenant promises that God made to every believer who calls on his name.
Sabi wani guso a wo share Wake Up Africa Jumedi Royal Television so na baby yedu no medical ma offer akasa na afi maba na mabekire abekan sembi ato nia ewo ho ne so obamba cha me
yo Kofi enam ebrenti yan call next picture.
Okay, your next picture no genealogy of Abraham.
Offer no can
The genealogy of Abraham. Me pacho and the next picture.
The terrace and a buy.
Okay. You
brief.
Yeah, no genealogy of Abraham. Into the fee Abraham papa so terra. Terra say Abraham Naho ena Haran nipa miensan na ye de saninti Abraham be wari Ketura Higa Sirai ena Naho Mika eno no ewo ho ye ono so ne de no wo ho na Lot so Moab fo no Ammon fo no so ewo ho ena ohwe a ansana Ketura ma Higa ma Sirai ma so ebo so sa enunti eno ye awon to so Teran a obehu Jesus Joshua eno say din na eden a say Jesus yo ni nyina ewo ho bi eno na that screen so no over
the next picture
no
the last video
the last picture no highway of the seed, the fourth covenant Abrahamic is formed. I say highway of the seed, the fourth covenant Abrahamic is formed. Genesis chapter 12 1-4. Okay, part of our picture need to so for my
quickly.
Okay. Kanya baby of our makeno and a kind of or say the fourth covenant Abrahamic is formed. Genesis chapter 12 1-4.
Oh, what change you know?
But all the dispensation that also you can't covenant, the fourth covenant, all the fourth dispensation. MCR, Pacho, Monsieur, Muyensis and Famaye. You can't fourth covenant. Yeah, that's only a fourth dispensation. Okay. Enti yeah, or the better so amayen by yeah you go so kind as you can or the better so. I say the fourth covenant Abrahamic is formed. Genesis chapter 12, 1-4, and confirmed. Spiritual seed promise. Genesis chapter 13, verse 14-17. Circumcision a sign. Genesis chapter 15, 1 verse 1-7, and Genesis chapter 17, 1 verse 1-8. Is in 7 distinct parts. 7 distinct parts in a new year. Covenant about Abraham. No. Yatichemu and son number boss no. I will make of thee a great nation. And 1, 2. I will bless thee. 2, 3. I will make thy name great. 4. And thou shalt be a blessing. 5. Will bless them that bless thee. 6. And curse him that curseth thee. 7. In thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed.
What kind of final video?
Okay. Your final video no, and it's a life well lived according to the Abrahamic covenant. A life well lived according to the Abrahamic covenant with God. Sa video no mama yehwe.
Abraham married Keturah, and this marriage produced 6 sons who founded kingdoms throughout Africa and Arabia. This wasn't an old man taking a young wife for companionship. This was Abraham fulfilling his destiny as the father of many nations through his African bloodline. The sons of Keturah established trading networks that connected Africa to the Middle East for centuries. They built cities, founded kingdoms, and maintained cultural practices that blended Abraham's Mesopotamian heritage with the African traditions that Keturah brought to the marriage. When Abraham finally died, Genesis 25:8 tells us he was gathered to his people. Now, who were his people? Based on everything we've discovered, his people weren't just the Mesopotamians he left behind in Ur. His people were the diverse family he had created through his marriages to Hagar and Keturah, the African-influenced household he had built in Canaan, the network of relationships he had established with African kingdoms throughout his journey. Abraham was buried in the cave of Machpelah, which he had purchased from the Hittites using African-influenced negotiation customs. But his true legacy lived on in the diverse nations that flowed from his African bloodline. The 12 tribes of Israel, the Arab nations through Ishmael, the African kingdoms through the sons of Keturah, all of them carrying forward the covenant promises that God had made to their African-influenced father. This journey wasn't just about one man moving from place to place. This was about God using a man with deep African roots to plant the seeds of his covenant in every corner of the known world. Abraham's travels created a network of relationships, a web of bloodlines, a foundation of cultural connections that would carry God's promises to every nation on earth. The spiritual significance of this journey is staggering. Every place Abraham traveled, every relationship he built, every child he fathered, all of it was part of God's plan to show that his covenant wasn't limited by race or ethnicity or geography. Through Abraham's African heritage, God was demonstrating that his love and his promises were meant for all people, all nations, all families of the earth.
Ebusia, when you go so I will share Wake Up Africa the Royal Television so na enne de menu mienu yenya abakosem a emu hwam emu ede na video na ye hwe ne last but one anyway last one yi kire yen ama ye hu se Abraham ne nkuro na se baby a atere eko enu ti na esese ba ne sa because no bo ade se na se na aman ahodo be pie eye bossa obo ade de se no enti se na se na obo ade se aman ahodo be pie sa aman na pie fi Abraham ase ni nyina no Hebrew Israelites wa ofa ho Hebrew Israelites nya fa se wa adwum se sankofo ni nyina no obo ade ni wo mo enye the Hebrew Israelites fo nko ena obo ade ani wo mo oni omo wa pam Hebrew Israelites nemom aman na aka na omo fi Abraham mu no omo yo obo ade dia ti obo ade ni omo anytime bia omo ba yo omo adwini se omo betu omo na mo yie abaye omo agya Abraham ade ye ni omo benante bia no obo ade ebeji wo obo ade onpu wo mo ye eni nti we ya ade a me pese ye de se ya adwini mu na yehu se enye only Hebrew Israelites nko a ena ye Hebrew for a obo ade ani wo mo ho owo maka ni nyina san so obo ade se bo no aye bo sa ode ma ne se wase na aman we nyina beba eni yehu aman ahodo a efi mu ba ye Ethiopia Ishmael Ketura asefo a omo nyina baba mu a Arab nations no eniwo mu ti sa aman nyina ye aman a video na ma ye hu se obo ade enu nti ena ma Moses tumi ko ware Ethiopian woman no obo ade ejeton mu anu sunsun nti ena ma o hwe omo abakosam se na enema tie na e ma omo timi ko ware ewo Abraham nations na efi na se ba ye no na kesa kwanya ewo ho enu nti video na ma ye abakosam a efa Abraham mu senya obo ade ye no ene bose na obo ade de man no senya isifa ko wie ye nyina ofa ama ye nya ne nyina ofa ye da ofa se ye be ko ofa ho na the last word ode amaye ofa
ni nyina ni se ene ni yehu enipa mi a o mo represent two spiritual systems ene o mu ni wiase na so no o mu akitafo Nimrod influence on modern society no ni trimu pa o yes enipa betini aye kibia ba ono ane ho obeyi ogba ade afiri mu eno na ekoso bo wiase sese saa so na Abraham asefo nso no de wotimi ye during Nimrod time no se obepa entro eni na ada ho no eno nso na abayi yenso ye trade marker yenso ye dinam enti no enne no oba ade asom no enye me kwa akopɛ visa bi atukwan enti sofu bi meboam enye mawari ehihim enti me kwa ma sofu bi ama makwantre nam biako eye about se ubehunu entro ni na ada na be pa ho entuma eno ne esumu a oba ade epese ye don't forget to say the struggle no is between good and evil. It is a revelation reality as I say the whole world has been deceived there. And the one no we heard the deception and the lies never huntuma. And then you juma ye. Obadi ami ahodi next week you know any ebehwe ekwan ba so na ba ya Nimrod da wukwa de dada enso ne influence no e na abeti atise e wo wiase kofima no asi
ofa medase ofa mabisa we asana majao obi kan send bi or send a text message say yama na hu na nia bie na o ka se no asori a eye kronkron ese se okoye BBB Christ Church of Christ and I'm catching and say me reply and say is it because of the name Christ in there now don't be deceived enti omisa hwehwe bible ni ye no mpe no koro na ti kwan ti me class a che na obisa o say oh home so then what do I go asori ben na menko and I'm catching say and then me ba meka ofa at sa me beto ofa anim na ofa ka ho asem enye ono nkwa na bisa nkofo afre se asori ben and ofa yenko
asori bia ni hobio ebi say age of Aquarius ko ewu emu no all organized religion a decline enja iva biu na woko ya dum pempem so a ye nyina ye nyane ye yehu ye bisa se ye kura enipasuo bel ye oba ade de e ba asasi su se ye mra na ye den eno na aduru so a ye hwehwe enye asori a woko religion de ne mre etwe ensa mabiem if you say the age of Pisces etwamko ensa mabiem ma hwefo nso mram
papa me da say me pa cho mo fa eye line no ento so ma ye na ahwefo no entumi enfebra yeguso ekinkan messages ya adofo mpa cho betimi afa we say good afternoon please we need the pictures of what we are learning from Richson priesthood Godwit we did there enye yizo yo eyo mate na ofa o hwe me you know ayina ode aye ne ayina nyasem ketwa okay say aha wesi me we nkwane ne baaye pato line no muntwanto maye na hello odi ne fa kwa afefi
Then Macapade.
Yet, yo, Brahima.
Yo, what the power from sleep at the more at the maybe of 5 years, maybe the best, or the best, that's the that's the bring me down and then why getting that, it's a right
yeah, that's it. I want to ask, is this just a regular history show or is it meant to give Africans insights or on their positive? I want to then to share programming. Hello, Udini Fakwa Frefi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Remember, Mama is not a Honda. The show program, the marshal, the Mom makes me say, you have to know, you have to come here at time. And we are not telling you, the person will be suffering. I will be brain. You have to come here now, the question, Mom.
Okay, any say, question, any say. Our dear baby, Yanko Pontiana, you. Hello, did you have baby? Yo, yet you. Udi.
You be sir, question this is CSA. Because of the family country.
Me pacho. Jumwa you nani enkasa. Anya sa you be you afiso. Yes, rew. Hello, udi ni fakwa ofefi.
Pato you breathe like me.
Wake up Africa, Pacho Anne.
Wake up Africa.
Ethiopia.
Yes, you can ask me a lot of me say, and I need that mistake at the man. I mean, Papa said, Papa, good is not for far over the jumping with the offer. Papa, we said it as a wrong. But see any Papa, maybe you will be a Danny Irania, and
that's it. This is Francis from Akosomo. I thank you all of your teachings us the way to our lineage and to let know that we are not slaves but rather royals, like the word which is said in Ecclesiastes, which said the royals are walking and the servants are on the horse. Please, we need a branch here so that we can learn more. Hello, Dini Fakwa Afrefi. Pacho, did I hear Nani and Kasa? Yet you. Okasa no to trust you. Pacho, mo San Frebium. Why? San Frebium. Hello, Dini Fakwa Afrefi.
Shalom. Shalom, because Eja amu an ko se du kwa no fi wa.
Yo yeti o.
Ebi kan no media se da fi oba de ma mo edom tina ko amu ti edom amu mo church ye no. Ebi kan e do mind. Onyankopon share ni bebre ni kwase nie. But Monica Bibi said, if you know your history and then you know where you come from, I thought you do. I guess you said the Bible history supporting the Bible prophecy.
Yeah, that's say any with the buyer or say please do it or say does it mean that Abraham did not have a child with where they are kind of da? Please, what is the difference between Muslim and Christians from Yahweh Kamali? Hello, Dini Fakwa Afrefi. Muka ya ntimo ne papa o. Okay, kasa yo yeti.
But you need to break. Ama tambe ya bu. Ene ya.
Hello, Dini Fakwa Afrefi. Hello, Dini Fakwa Afrefi.
Jamu adu kwa na fi.
Me pata o fi anu ma uni ansa Afrefi.
Yes, yes. Ese obika na sabino. Chaka bena da ejiri fo. Eye Israel for. Any sa ada tracks na. Omu na from to omu yo na metumo for ni. So ku be na da wo mu tin twa. Ye mache we omo me yehu ti Abraham. Ejiri fo nyina eja. Eni ye Abraham. Ono no panam no sure. Ebenya ebusuaku ahodo nyina. Ye na bi fo na.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Odini Fakwa Afrefi.
Le baby afi ko praso.
Yetio. Mpacho jom why you know?
Afi ko praso.
Wo tie wo mpacho
maybe self after. Ofi ezisi so hu hia bi ezisi a Yesu so ka se o baba be pa de ma. On be so no ba be bi afa ne anya kwaje.
Roman for na kan asasem no enye Yesu na kan sansem ni bi o ha ya kan hye na no. Hello, Odini Fakwa Afrefi. Hello, Odini Fakwa Afrefi.
Hello.
Odini Fakwa Afrefi.
Hello. Aba di ancha mo na o Islam.
Yeah, that's it.
Ba di nsesi mo. Efere na ba me kaza to akotia.
Yo.
And bi ene de mugusu yi ni se na de bia me to me kan no. Na akasa ni publishum na ni pa betu wana mo. Ejiri se na so ni pa bebre na efere na atinia. Yes kan na se. No. Da e ba te betimi a nka Passover no om de homra na mu meti na mu mi ho ma me. So na be ya yi de betu ya kwa yemi. Da chen no yi na kabo.
Yeah, that's it. Please, is the world actually going to end some days to come? Or please, I want to know this. Please answer me. I'm Kobe Kumase Hatosu. The establishment authorities of this Hagado Makai Sadio Wedada or CBBS also let him download today's program from YouTube and screenshot the pictures he needs. Okay, but online we move from me to me and foul when the kind messages okay. May God bless you and help you all. So always we see the truth from Obed at Aguna Ahanta. Okay, the Pamcho Ediana Owo Enkran. Jumadie of Atite Nema Yawama, what it's your ma, almost so me or more Maquenya Muye, Jumadie be Ahodo Ewo radio stations. We so Accra had no air, Accra, Mothers FM 102.7, Mothers FM 102.7, and we fear baby 9 to 10, and you 9 to 10, Obete a year or Monka. Sanso so na okọ Cape Coast obenya Darling FM eno 90.9 eno kwasiada bia 8 to 9 enumre kwasiada bia 8 to 9 enumre obenya dwumadie bi atie bi asanye so the beat fm and also 95.5 and memenda bia and you made 9:30 to 10 and you made 9:30 to 10 and ebia na open nsɛmmisa bi open kyerɛmu bi and ofrɛ ɛyɛ number ya nsɛmmisa bi ano obenya ano yie 0244 686557 0244 686557 saa nso so ɛna yɛ momo number no ane onim sɛ ɛgya kwanchan deɛ fɛ yɛde sika na ɛyɛ fidie nso yɛbɛtena hɔ yɛ sika ɛno nti monom yɛn momo number no ɛyɛ 0245 070164 0245 070164 edin a ɛba so no ɛyɛ Joseph Kofi Ediko saa nso na wopɛ book atɔ a for number wɛ 0244 888910 0244 888 888 aha ɛna ɛbere ɛma yɛ kwan me yɛde dwumadie ne nyinaa bɛwie osomfo Kofi Kumi me na metena gwam sɛ chiamefo me ne wafa ya opoku dankwa a ɔyɛ executive director de my ko ɛfɛ Freedom Mind movement ɛna di sɛ dwuma wei ɔbɔ adeɛ dom yɛn a da sɛ ne yɛbɛsan hyia makra mu nyinaa